Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Convo. I am Joe.
And I'm Corey.
And tonight's episode is conspiracy theories.
Everybody's favorite 2 a.m. rabbit hole, conspiracy theories.
Hopefully we get to cover a bunch of different ones. You know, one that I think we should just get out of the way real quick is, do you remember New Coke?
I was barely old enough. I've read all the stories about them changing the formula and it going over terribly. What's the conspiracy theory? That it was just to make people love old Coke?
One of the big conspiracy theories behind that was the theory claims that the Coca-Cola company intentionally changed to an inferior formula with New Coke with the intent of either driving up demand for the original product or permitting the reintroduction of the original with a new formula using cheaper ingredients.
New formula using cheaper ingredients would make sense because if it was even closer to the thing that people used to love, then they would accept it.
Exactly.
Were sales for Coke struggling at the time?
They bottomed out. Normally, because I remember when they did change that formula in the New Coke, and what it almost tasted like was like they were trying to go to the syrupy taste of Pepsi.
That's what I'd heard when I'd read about New Coke, is that some people considered it them trying to compete with Pepsi. Is it possible they just tried that and failed?
I think so, because it was, that's when they introduced the Coke Classic, and it was supposed to be the classic taste that everyone loved the Coke before. Because that's the one thing is they were trying to get people that love the Pepsi product, and they were trying to tap into that, but they alienated their own base by doing that.
For anybody who doesn't think the two of them are different, I mean, New Coke should give you the example, but it's wildly different.
Yeah.
But also, I think that's funny because I was thinking while I was researching conspiracy theories we could talk about, just the mindset of people. And I mean, we're all guilty of this from time to time, looking up a conspiracy theory, whether it be for entertainment or what have you. But a lot of times it comes from, we can't understand something, so there must be a more nefarious or larger reason behind it than people believe there actually is. Like, New Coke is kind of a silly example, but it just seems silly to say that, oh yeah, Coke made this massive blunder for no particular reason. It's more interesting if we make it into this shrewd ploy on their part. So to me, that goes beyond the Pepsi and Coke conspiracy theory. Even if you go to a classic conspiracy theory, which, to be honest with you, I also think some conspiracy theories start with what could be a bit of truth. The big one from the last 50, 60 years is John F. Kennedy, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that a lone gunman from so far away was able to fire the perfect single shot. So I understand where the conspiracy theory comes from. There's also other circumstances surrounding that event that are shady. What pops up out of there, if you dig deep into what people believe, it gets increasingly fantastical, right? The CIA, something having to do with Cuba, right? The answer gets more and more convoluted the deeper you dive.
It has to be true. There's no way that it could be made up.
You mean there's no way that Oswald shot Kennedy?
Well, no, it just makes it like there was nefarious reasons behind it, because everything seems to add up, but nothing really is provable.
That's the beautiful part of if you're a full-blown conspiracy theorist, you almost don't have to prove anything. You just sort of have to put it out there and let the mythos build itself. As far as Kennedy goes, I even tend to think it's a bit unlikely that Oswald acted alone and in the way that they said that he did. But I'm also a little more content than most in knowing that we'll never know the full answers. But the full answers that a conspiracy theorist gives can be so outlandish.
But they fill the gaps that everyone wants to know. And that's what makes them seem credible.
Right, you're giving me a piece of information that helps explain what I don't understand. Because in the end, people aren't comfortable with that they just won't understand.
JFK was a whole nother bag of worms.
I thought the pandemic was an interesting exercise in like conspiracy theories in real time. Like we touched on this in a previous episode, but like the messaging around vaccine and mask and all that stuff during the pandemic. The truth was they didn't have the answers yet, but they almost had to act as if they did.
To give themselves the credibility.
Right, because if they didn't, people would fill in the gaps. And the conspiracy stuff happened anyway in real time.
Yeah, one of them was that the vaccine had chips in it and people were going to get tracked.
Yep, that was a big one. You know, and even just basic stuff about like mask effectiveness.
Yeah.
I've often said that the truth is when they recommended masks, they likely had no idea whether they were effective or not. But they made it sound as though they definitely were because they knew if they 50-50'd it, nothing was going to happen.
It would have to be full compliance or nothing at all.
Exactly. But away from current events, you have a favorite conspiracy theory that you believe either has a shred of truth or is so outlandish that you just enjoy it?
I love the conspiracy theory of the moon landing. How they think it's something that was done on set and everything was set there and it was on a sound stage and they had a director and the director directed everything. That one I usually chuckle at.
Have you ever seen the documentary Room 236?
No, I have not.
You know what it's about?
Is it about the moon landing?
It states that The Shining contains evidence from Stanley Kubrick that he directed the moon landing and is an apology for doing so.
Oh.
And it is just as outrageous as you might believe it to be.
I don't believe that though. I really don't.
So the only thing I will say, and believe me, the answer could be as simple as there's nothing of value in it. But what I will say is we've never gone back to the moon.
No, we haven't.
So that's an interesting little morsel there.
Well, that was the one thing during the 1970s. It was with OPEC and everything like that, where people were starving and people were not starving, but couldn't put gas in their cars, but yet were shooting astronauts into this place and collecting rocks from the moon. So it was more of that pressure that stopped them from doing it.
I mean, that's funny looking back on it with a current lens, because now we have billionaires that just go to space for fun.
Yeah.
And people can't afford to put gas in their cars. But yeah, that's always been a big one. And again, I think it's just that's another one. On top of like not being able to understand, if it's a momentous event, there has to be something behind it. Is another big one.
Yeah.
That's what the moon landing is really.
What was it? Another one that I saw was the New World Order.
Oh, we're talking Illuminati and all that stuff.
The Illuminati, the little meetings that they have every summer in Bohemian Grove, where all of the most powerful people, the power brokers of the world, all meet in this place in California in the Redwood Forest, and it's all secret. You know, no one else can attend. It's invitation only, where they're sitting there and they're dividing up the world and what they're going to be doing with it. I thought that was funny.
The funny part about that to me is there are pieces of that aren't even like, I don't think that's true. I don't believe in secret meetings, but like a New World Order is kind of not clandestine anymore, is it? People begin to understand that the world is run by a few select, very rich people. There kind of is one, and it's just out in the open.
And they flaunt it.
Yes, they flaunt it. They let you know that there is one. They're not even hiding it. It's not a conspiracy if you don't hide it.
What was the other one? The whole thing about, oh man, there's tons of them. Like Paul is dead. You want to go into Paul is dead for us?
Paul McCartney died in a car accident and was replaced with a look-alike.
And the same thing could be said with they tried this again with Mark Hamill after he got into a car accident in between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. they're saying that he was replaced too.
The funny part about the Paul McCartney one, like I said, is the Beatles having fun with it, with the imagery, with the symbolism. Take the Abbey Road cover, for instance. Paul is the only one who's barefoot because he's supposed to be the corpse, and the other three are the pallbearers. There's a reference to Billy Shears in a Beatles song, who was the person who people believe replaced McCartney. I didn't know they tried to do it again with Hamill, though.
Yeah, it was right after his car accident, right before Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, did they identify the look-alike like they did with McCartney?
No, they haven't.
Oh, see, that's even weaker then. You got to at least identify the look-alike. I want some details. No matter how BS they are, I want the details.
Well, that's where Mark Hamill comes in. Mark, answer us. We'll have you on.
Mark Hamill, if you're out there, did you have a stunt double who then people maybe thought was your replacement? Also, you do an excellent Joker, and you were really good in that episode of Criminal Minds. You don't get enough credit beyond Luke Skywalker, so I'm just giving it to you. But answer us if you're out there and listening.
Also, probably one of the best live-action Flash villains I have ever seen.
Yeah, Joe's a big fan of the Flash. I knew he was going to
That's right.
that.
Trickster for life. James Jesse, calling you out.
Love it.
Oh, what was the other one? So, then you come across other ones like the death of Jeffrey Epstein. It was convenient how all of his cameras in the cell block he was in when he died went dark.
That could have a simple answer though of they just didn't give a crap whether he died or not.
Yeah.
Like it could be like everybody knows, the stuff he's guilty of, so people just let him die. I guess, right, people think he's implicating people with power, right? That's what they think.
Yeah.
And that's why he died. So that I could understand. But I also understand why a guy like that would die in prison. So this is before my time, too. Did you ever feel like you were subliminally advertised on as a child?
Constantly. Constantly. Saturday mornings was when they did it,
Oh, so you full on believe that this happened?
Oh, yeah. Back in the early 80s and mid 80s, that was it, man, right there. If you were a toy company, a food company, you sat there and you got yourself an ad in the Saturday morning cartoons. That was the best way to sell your product.
But no. You got yourself an ad, not a secret ad, though, right?
Oh, no, they stopped that.
That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah.
That's what people think was prevalent in that time period.
No, because they actually started regulating that because I believe in the 1950s, right after it was a European country where someone was actually doing the subliminal advertising across the airwaves, and that was to get themselves elected. I forgot what country it was in, but it actually worked, and the person got elected. They made sure that it wouldn't happen anywhere else.
Feel like I'm going to need evidence to support what you just said, but that's going to happen a lot in this podcast, I think.
Yeah.
Before we get into, because I know you want to talk about some that turned out to be true, about a little light anecdote before we get into that. Do you know who Peter McIndoe is, Joe?
No.
He is a 23-year-old when 2017 started social media pages and such with the simple tagline, "Birds aren't real." So this was his whole thing, and he insisted on this in character in interviews was that birds aren't real, they're just surveillance drones made by the U.S. government.
Oh, man.
And it came out 4 years later that to him the whole thing was just a ploy about how information can spread, especially in this day and age. And of course he believed that birds are real. But the number of people he got to, for lack of a better term, play along is hilarious. And it's because it kind of shows too that conspiracies sometimes they grow, right? All you have to do is put it out, and it will grow exponentially without you doing any more work.
Yeah. And that's one of the big things, too, is Area 51. Area 51 was probably one of the most prevalent ones that a lot of people have heard of. It's a secret installation out in Nevada where they have alien bodies and they do all this secret government work, where it actually was a place where they developed new spy planes and weapons for the military.
Right. And the thing is, of course, something weird did happen around that time as far as Area 51 goes, but just over time, it's been blown out of proportion. Whatever it was that happened is not this secret alien lair that people think it is now. It's just not. You had a few that you said that turned out to be true.
Yes.
So hit us with a couple of those.
A couple of the ones that were true was a government program called Operation Paperclip. And so towards the end of World War II, what they started doing was any scientists they found in Germany that they thought they could help bolster their efforts against the communists, they would actually sit there and put up with jobs in the U.S. government. And at the time, people were like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. You're just talking out of your ass. You don't know what you're talking about. But you had one of the foremost rocket scientists with them, and he was the one that led NASA.
That is an interesting one because, it's easier now with hindsight, but even then, that's one that should have made sense to a lot of people because the Germans were no longer the enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those individual Germans did not have the power to cause strife, and the U.S. was worried about the Russians. But they were smart enough to not dismiss the intelligence of those Germans.
Except for Wernher von Braun, he was the innovator of the V-2 rocket that bombed England. But yet he's the one that revolutionized NASA and made it possible for people to actually land on the moon.
Yeah. And again, like I said, it makes perfect sense looking back on it. They probably just felt like they needed, the whole thing was a race with Russia at the time. And at their disposal, they had access to these brilliant minds, regardless of how evil. So, of course, they were going to, take that opportunity.
Another one was Project Sunshine. And what that was, it was commissioned by the U.S. Atomic Energy Committee and the U.S. Air Force, designed to investigate the effects of nuclear radiation on humans and the environment. It saw the U.S. government harvest and use, often without permission of parents, the body parts of dead children and babies to see the saturation of the amounts of strontium in their bones after radiation damage.
So people that had died near testing sites and stuff, or after
they were already radiation. Any of those.
Oh, they just took the dead bodies and bombed.
They took dead bodies that were already dead, without the permission of parents, and used them in the bombing sites or around them, so they could sit there and dissect them and find out what was going on.
And they copped to this years later. Well, I'm sure it just
there was forms that were released that they actually did do that. What was it? Another one was MK Ultra. I don't know if you know about
mind control one, right?
Mind control, where it was using psychedelic and hallucinogenic drugs on unsuspecting American citizens and military personnel to investigate the viability of behavior modification programs. That's some scary stuff right there.
That's the one that probably people are never going to stop trying to achieve, is mind control on some level.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, that's scary.
Another one was during Prohibition, the U.S. government was actually poisoning alcohol with antifreeze.
Oh, you know what? I read that one not too long ago, not even in preparation for this podcast, and I just thought that was ridiculous.
Killed tens of thousands of people during that time because of that. What was it? The other one was U.S. spying, Edward Snowden, with the top secret documents that he released to journalists in 2013 that showed that the United States government was essentially cherry picking or actually eavesdropping on everyone's telecommunications.
Patriot Act, baby.
Yeah. Another one was the Gulf of Tonkin back in Vietnam that rallied and bolstered the country to continue the war in Vietnam. August 2nd.
They just make up that battle, is what we're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. August 2nd, 1964, in the midst of the Vietnam War, the USS Maddox, on an intelligence mission along North Vietnam's coast, allegedly fired upon and damaged several North Vietnamese torpedo boats that had been stalking it in the Gulf of Tonkin. The Maddox was also reportedly attacked by North Vietnamese vessels on August 4th. That was actually not proclaimed, but declassified in 2005 that it was a fake incident to increase support for the U.S. war in Vietnam.
And I mean, and that is another thing that just makes perfect sense. I mean, with the support waning, and of course they're going to try and drum up your patriotism, your nationalism. Like, we don't have to turn this around and get into 9/11. If you want to, we can. But the one piece of 9/11 I've always believed to be suspect is the plane that lands in Pennsylvania. So I hope that those passengers were able to take down the plane, and it's a great story. It's great for patriotism that they did that. Those people get to go out heroes. But I've always found it infinitely more likely that the government just realized that was a hijacked plane and shot it down.
It does look like that, especially when you if you saw pictures of that field where they didn't really look, you didn't see the wreckage. You know, they never really showed the wreckage on that date. The same thing could be said about the Pentagon, how people say that it was a missile attack that hit the Pentagon. But, you know, it's everyone's going to think what they want to think. And,
some of the ones regarding the towers feel a little outlandish.
Yeah, it was a planned demolition and everything like that.
That one with like I said, with United 93, it just feels like something that the government would do to minimize damage, but then they could never ever admit that they did it.
Well, they would be able to, they would probably declassify that, but me and you will be long gone before they ever do that. It's the same thing with the Kennedy assassination. Those records have been sealed, and they were supposed to be unsealed, I want to say 2 years ago, but Trump still kept them sealed. He said no, he would not release it.
And I don't think, unless, like you said, when we're way after you and I are gone, perhaps they'll be released, but not anytime soon.
But, oh man, there's another one of these. It's the first lady who ran the country. In October of 1919, President Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke that rendered him incapable of governing. And it's been disclosed that his wife was the one that was running the country. She was forging his name. She was actually making decisions on his part.
What's funny is that we kind of know that to be true with FDR.
Yeah.
At least at times. They've I don't want to say let that one slip, but the nature of FDR's condition later in his terms is kind of well known by now.
And then, what was it? Weather manipulation?
So that kind of all sort of ties in, I guess, to global warming, but I'll tell you the reason I don't believe in any weather manipulation abilities by anyone, because we'd never have to drop a bomb again, would we?
No, but that's the one thing, though, weather manipulation. They say that the U.S. did it in Vietnam. What they did was they seeded the clouds over certain areas of North Vietnam in order for them not to get supplies and to flood out people. And they also did it in the 80s with Chernobyl. The Russians did it before the radioactive cloud hit Moscow.
And your thoughts on that?
I think it's the one in Chernobyl has been proven that it did do that. They did do that because they had the Red Day celebrations in Moscow.
How did they do it?
They seeded the clouds.
Meaning?
what they do with it is they do something that actually binds precipitation and it makes it rain. The Chinese did it during the Olympics when it was in Beijing to get rid of
Okay.
most of the smog.
Oh, see, so now I'm getting knowledge I did not have previously.
But one of the big ones was DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency for the U.S. military, and the University of Alaska created a high-frequency active auroral research program, other known as HARP, that people say was going to be something for mind control, trigger earthquakes, do rain, flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, but that never happened.
Oh, see, because like I said, that feels like the ultimate weapon.
Yeah.
And if it was in the hands of the military, talk about the way we fight would change. It was like, hey, here's a hurricane, enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, you have your army out there? Don't worry. Here comes a hurricane. Here's a tsunami for you. You wouldn't even have to shoot a bullet. It's like the old G.I. Joe weather dominator.
I often think of, like, I think there are conspiracy theories that are true that extend into, like, our everyday life, like business and technology. I am certain that technology has been suppressed because it is too efficient.
It has. And if they actually unleash technology, like all of our lives would be so much better. But on the downs, most of the jobs would be going away too.
For sure.
You know, you have to weigh that, where it's going to be extremely helpful and extremely productive, but yet what are people going to be doing? It's not like we live in a utopian society where, you know, money has no meaning.
The thing is that people already have jobs that don't produce money. They're literally just there to work. A lot of people's jobs don't produce or, you know, generate any money.
It's just sitting there punching a clock and getting a paycheck.
So as far as tech goes, do you know what the light bulb conspiracy is?
No, I don't.
On December 23rd, 1924, a group of leading international businessmen gathered in Geneva for a meeting that would alter the world. Present were top executives from all major light bulb manufacturers, including Germany's Osram, Netherlands' Philips, and the United States' General Electric. As revelers hung Christmas lights elsewhere in the city, the group founded the Phoebus Cartel, a supervisory body that would carve up the worldwide incandescent light bulb market, with each national and regional zone assigned its own manufacturers and production quotas. It was the first cartel in history to enjoy a global reach. Light bulbs work better than people think they do. They actually made light bulbs worse because there was no money to be made in them otherwise.
If you had ever glowing light, you would never need another one. It's the same thing with tires. Tires are the same way for cars.
There is a firehouse in Boston that has had one light bulb on constantly every minute since 1920. Never went out. Ever. They literally made light bulbs worse so that they could make money.
Because it was the size of the filament that they were using, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Because they decreased the size of the filament, the gauge, and next thing you know, that's what made them prone to blowing.
Yep, failure. Yeah. And it's basically, they call it planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
And we see that in everyday technology now, too. Your smartphone that can't run the latest system update and makes you upgrade.
They do that more and more frequently now.
Yep, absolutely. Your newest video game console and etc. So I always get a kick out of, you talked about ones that made you laugh. I get a kick out of conspiracy theories that seem to pop up for no particular reason. Like, I honestly have no idea why in the past 5 to 10 years there's been a dramatic increase in people who believe the Earth's flat.
Oh my God.
You care to explain to me why that is, or why you think that might be? Because I have no idea.
I think it's people that, I do not believe that at all. And yeah, I feel a lot of pity for the people that do. I'm sorry if you're listening and you feel that the Earth is flat, but Uh,
If you
I can't.
are listening and you feel that the Earth is flat, I want to know in detail what you think. Like, I would almost invite you on. You can have 5 minutes before either of us say anything, and I want to try to understand it from your point of view. Because honestly, I want to know you would just fall off. Nobody's found the end and fallen off. So that seems to be all the evidence I need.
That does not make any sense to me. And, I understand people, hey, you could believe whatever you want to believe, but that just does not seem like it is possible.
I
So
think I think especially in this day and age, science has bred so many strange conspiracy theories. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with if something is beyond the person's understanding,
yeah.
then they tend to believe that it must go deeper than that, and that's why it's beyond their understanding.
Well, that's the one thing I'm reading up about it now is flat Earth conspiracy theorists hold that the planet Earth is not a sphere, and that evidence has been faked or suppressed to hide the fact that it is instead a disk or a single infinite plane. Conspiracy often implicates NASA. Other claims include that GPS devices are rigged to make aircraft pilots wrongly believe they are flying around the globe.
But what I don't get too, right? On top of how ridiculous that all sounds, what's the point? Like, what are we gaining by hiding that the Earth is flat? Like, I understand that a lot of times, people believe it's a conspiracy for somebody's personal gain or whatever. Who's gaining from that bit of information?
I don't know, but there is one thing. The horizon doesn't lie. The sun sets and the sun rises at different times and during the day. It's not
Do,
like we have we're not baking in the sun, and not everyone is getting sun at the same time.
do they think it doesn't though? They must think it doesn't.
Well, if that's the case, then they need to, strap on the tinfoil hat because other people are reading their minds. Because I have no idea.
Yeah, that one always makes me laugh. And there are like prominent, there are some celebrities and athletes and prominent public figures who just sort of let it slip that they believe that, and like it's nuts to me.
But how? That's it's nuts to me how you can actually think like that, though.
Like we've seen things that are round and we've seen things that are flat, and we know how they behave. So no, just that alone should be able to deduce that it's not flat because the way that it all behaves, like you said, sunrise, sunset, tides, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
moon.
The moon, yes.
It's all an elaborate scheme. Maybe we are in the Truman Show. Who knows?
I think I feel like conspiracy has been it's been weaponized by a dangerous segment of people, I think, or they I don't know how to phrase this. Like they'll lean into conspiracy if it means that it gets them power, right?
Yeah.
People who call things like school shootings false flag operations, people who believe in QAnon, or at least cater to those that do in the interest of power. Like conspiracy at some point in the last 15 to 20 years went from something that was like mildly intriguing and it could either provoke thought or make you laugh to something that's become quite dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything when you have a strong enough belief in it. Some can be said about, religion. Religion is the same thing. It's their belief. They have that strong of a belief that they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that their belief is supreme or they have the right way of doing things. It's they want to be the loudest voice. They want to be the savior. But it's something like that is just absolute nonsense. And, I could see where they think that like in a certain one that's in my mind similar to that, is the moon landing being taped? Okay, it could be. I could see it being. It might possibly be, but I don't think it happened. I don't think it was. I think it was live. But there's no possible way that I could sit there and say, you know what, Corey? I think the Earth is flat.
Right. Then the thing about the moon landing, we touched on it. You could at least make the argument with the fake moon landing conspiracy that there was a lot that stood to be gained by doing it.
Yes.
Right? That's certainly true no matter how you feel about it. Faking it would have been a big win for the government, for sure. But that has to be, it should be a tentpole of all conspiracy theories. Because if you can't give me a reason why this would have been beneficial, then what are we even doing here?
Exactly. There is no way that the Earth being flat is plausible.
Not only is it not plausible, like I said, who does it benefit? That
Exactly.
That should be the first question you ask with every conspiracy theory. And some of the older ones, there's obvious links as to who it might benefit. JFK, certain people wanted him gone. Obviously, there's some benefit to be had there. Paul is dead, right? You want to keep the gravy train rolling, right? There's some benefit to be had.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But the Earth is flat. Who benefits from the Earth being flat? The makers of saltine crackers?
Yeah.
Now they can say it's shaped like the Earth? What is it? What are we...
It's to bring back the sugar cube. That's why.
There you go. There you go. Oh, man. That's going to be like on Wikipedia tomorrow, now that you said it.
I know.
All of a sudden, it's going to have something to do with big sugar, the Earth being flat.
Yeah, it's a sugar cube conspiracy.
But now, this is... How do you feel about how conspiracy is used now? Because it feels like anything has a platform. And as great as the internet is, anything having a platform without really the need to explain it or give it any credibility is scary. Like I said before, we have false flag operations. We have people who will tell you dead set that the Holocaust never happened. That kind of stuff. Like, that is where conspiracy is going, and that's a scary thought.
That is, because the internet has brought more of this to light because everyone now has a voice. You don't have to worry about standing on a street corner with a pamphlet that you sit there and make with a potato and make a bunch of different pamphlets and hand them out to people and get made fun of.
These people aren't they're not on the fringes anymore.
No, but they still have some sort of anonymity when they sit there and talk about it. It's not like they're sitting there talking face to face. It's written word. They can always deny it.
Of course.
That wasn't me.
And it's reaching, as fun as conspiracy theories can be, it's reaching a scary space, I feel like.
It is, because it's I'm not saying it should be regulated. By all means, I don't think speech should be regulated, but you sit there and you look at some of these half-cooked propositions that they're saying, kind of leads you to be like, yeah, okay, no, that's not good.
Yeah. But I mean, we've covered politics at length, and I think it sort of goes back into that. But honestly, what we're good at is food. So I wanted to circle it back into food conspiracies. And not really a conspiracy, but just some funny things that people bring up. Like, it's a big conspiracy, right? Why are there not enough buns in a hot dog bun package for all the hot dogs? That feels like a conspiracy, right? I've never figured that out. Um, and here I am as I'm looking at food conspiracies. There is the fluoride will turn people into communists. Fluoride is poison. Will
Yeah.
turn people into communists. That was the thing, right? Like you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There's a conspiracy theory that Tim Hortons coffee, which is popular in upstate New York and Buffalo. Shout out to Buffalo, my second home. Go Bills. There's a conspiracy theory that the coffee has nicotine in it. That's why people keep coming back. It's addictive coffee. I mean, let's be honest. Food. I don't know if it's really a conspiracy that like it's made addictive. Obviously, if it was nicotine, it would be. But certain foods are definitely designed to be addictive.
I don't know. It's like back in when I was a teenager, they used to say, don't drink Mountain Dew because it'll make you sterile.
Really? That was the thing?
That was a thing. That was the thing that was usually, I think it was because grown-ups didn't want to see kids all hyped up on caffeine.
Right. I mean, I guess I've seen that too, right? That's in the same vein as rock music is the devil kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah. And
All that
comic
kind of stuff.
books and video
Yep.
games, and they need a straw man, something to blame the ills of society on.
Here's a good one that actually it's a food one that's kind of silly, but turned out to be true. When you were younger, was fondue a big thing yet?
No.
Right. So it happened, like it exploded. What? 80s, mid 80s, 90s, really fondue.
Yeah.
So basically, it turned out that its popularity wasn't an accident. It was basically a marketing campaign by a Swiss cheese cartel. The cheese organization was in charge of manufacturing and marketing several popular cheeses, including Emmental and Gruyere, both of which melt easy. While the cartel didn't invent fondue goes back to maybe the 1600s, they did promote the use of those specific cheeses heavily at the expense of other cheeses that did not melt well, essentially manufacturing the fondue craze to serve their own interests. So I'm
Gotta
sure
in-
it always happens in marketing.
oh, it
Marketing,
does.
yeah, I'm sure of it. That's just a good example.
So do you have any personal conspiracy theories that you'd like to?
Look, this is not one that I believe, but I like to shout out my dad anytime I get a chance. I loved my dad. I missed my dad, and I'll never forget it though. I was probably in my mid-20s at the time, so he didn't tell this to a child me. We were sitting in my pool one day, and I swear I thought he was kidding. Because, like, we've had discussions, he and I had discussions, because he was an agnostic, and I'm an atheist. And we were just sitting in the pool relaxing. I asked him the question one day, because, right, being an agnostic means that you believe that there is something in control, but you don't know what that is, right? That's what
Mhm.
agnosticism is. So I asked him what he thought it was, and he said that he thought Earth was a penal colony watched over by aliens, and we were all being held or punished by aliens. And I looked and I waited for him to smile or laugh, and he did neither. And I realized that he held that belief sincerely. And I can't tell you just how much that conversation has stuck with me over time. What about you, Joe? Any conspiracy theories?
And the one I can think of, and I know this is going to be old hat for you because I've been spewing this out for probably a couple months. But you know, do you think of it as any coincidence that these big billionaires are sitting there and launching themselves into space? I don't. I do
Do
not at
you,
all. The whole
do you think
reason
they're
why.
looking for what, another livable?
No. I think what they are doing is they are looking to the stars to gain more riches. You're going to see within the next 10 to 15 years that either Blue Origin, SpaceX, or Virgin Galactic is going to have processing centers on the moon where they will be processing ore from asteroids that they mine from remote drones brought back to the moon, and they will be getting all the precious elements that those asteroids have. And one of the reasons why is, and that's another reason why I think that global warming people are up in arms and the environmentalists, is because if you look at it, who would benefit? Who would benefit would be those people, because that means no more coal mining. That means no more gold mining. That means no more, killing of anything anymore. Everything would be mined off world. The only problem with that is, and why Space Force was developed, was because if they are going to be processing that, then you have to have some sort of government entity in place so people do not raid them. We are going to have almost like the Caribbean up in the upper atmosphere, because they're going to be trying to get all of those precious metals and bring them back to Earth.
So I never really considered that. The one thing I will say, without diving too deep into what you said, is it just makes sense because, well, part of it does. I'm not so sure about the specifics, but given what we know about rich people, the oligarchs that run the world, for lack of a better term, they don't do anything if they don't think it can generate them more money. So whatever they're doing, they must think it can generate them more wealth down the line. And that may very well be it.
But that's the thing, is the power brokers that be are not going to allow them to go back to Earth with those precious metals, because then next thing you know, the price of gold will drop, the price of silver will drop, platinum will drop. You can't bring it back. You could use it. You can make sure it goes to your company's bottom line, but you can't use it on the planet.
So you could be diving into something deeper, right?
Yeah.
Because if a billionaire has a secret gold reserve, right, or a mineral reserve that can wipe out the value of all these things here on Earth, who's really holding the power here?
Exactly. That's the only thing that I think is holding everybody at bay.
I see where you go, and then as nefarious as it sounds, you could have something there.
So you heard it here first, everybody.
You heard it here on Wheel of Convo.
That's right.
The oars of power are in motion.
That's right. Those fields are made of gold, I tell ye.
And not the Sting song, because that sucks.
Can you imagine that, though, having like just a black starship in space, and you sit there and raid these automatic drones that are bringing platinum and silver and gold.
Right. If we figured that out, you would have ordinary people doing everything they could to get to space.
Exactly.
You'd have people building rockets in their cornfields to try and get there. Yeah.
And that's why Space Force is needed.
Yeah. That's you've opened the minds of our listeners here, Joe, I believe.
That's right. I think so.
That's crazy stuff.
I know. That's what I believe anyway.
Honestly, I think it's possible. I think you might have something there.
That's the only reason why someone would sink that much money into going into space. Think about it. The reward has to be that grand.
Exactly. What I don't think people are considering, because I wasn't until you said it, is that there has to be a monetary reward. These guys just don't do it for the hell of it. That doesn't happen.
No, because they're gonna sit there and they're gonna be able to. They're gonna get paid by these people on the ground to, hey, leave your stuff up there, and it's almost gonna be like blackmail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're gonna get more richer.
Yep.
If that's a word, more richer.
We're going with it. More richer. We're going with it. More richer.
Richer?
Speaking of mining, I think there's plenty more to mine from this topic should we land on it again.
Yeah.
But so we need to get ready for our next spin.
Yes, we do.
Episode.
And that's what we are going to do right now.
Let's give it a spin.
All right. And we'll see what we're going to be talking about next week. And
okay.
All right. So what we're going to do, since it landed on the people spot and we got no responses for the people spot, So what we are going to do is we are going to go to an alternate way of finding out what we're going to be talking about. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the most downloaded episode, and that will be the People's Spot. And let's go to that.
So we can revisit the topic the people seem to enjoy the most.
Yes. So that will be, drum roll, with 54 downloads, it will be Elephants and Donkeys.
All right, so we're going to go back to politics.
Politics.
And I think like we discussed last time, this will be, we discussed the problem at length in episode 1, so now it's time for our versions of the answer.
The solutions, if you may. So what we will be doing is talking over about some of the solutions, so we could actually be part 2 of Elephants and Donkeys, the conclusion.
The conclusion, and then we're going to also unveil a couple of new wheel spots next week.
Yeah, that's
the episode as well.
Going to update the wheel.
Retool the wheel just a little bit. Elephants and Donkeys will come off for the time being. It can always be revisited at a later time. But after part 2, it will come off for the time being.
So we'll do that. So we look forward to having our discussion about Elephants and Donkeys part 2 on the next episode.
2 indeed. This has been a fun one. Let us know, anybody watching, what your favorite conspiracy is or was. And please, if anybody listening believes that the Earth is flat, tell me why. Please
comment on our Facebook site, especially if you feel that the Earth is flat, because this way we can get in contact with you and give you an invite, and we would actually have a special recording for that episode. Why the Earth is flat. I think, Corey, you would agree to that?
I would agree to that. Anybody willing to come on, we give you an open forum without judgment. We won't judge you when you give us the reasons. We'd like to discuss it, though.
Yeah. But, you'll get probably 15 minutes of civility before, we pick you apart like a bunch of vultures.
Fair enough.
All right. So this has been another episode of the Wheel of Convo. I am Joe.
And I'm Corey.
And may the wheel spin in your favor. Everybody, have a great night.